Welcome to the Discovering Leadership podcast. My name is Corbin Hannis. As usual, I'm joined by my co-host, Carl Bowden. Carl, what are we going to be talking about today?
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about delegation and the creation of time and space to strategize. Now, before we go into our topic, the purpose of the Discovering Leadership podcast is about you. It's about instilling the foundational principles of leadership within you, within your business, and within your community. So, we want you to build in your relationships. We want to help you craft your strategy in your business, in your life, and then also help you to live to your most authentic self. We want to build a community of leaders. We want to lead leaders and help people to lead by example. Now, today's topic on creation of time and space to strategize, we're going to be talking about empowering your people to lead through delegation. We're going to be hitting points that include increasing time without decreasing output and allowing time for creativity and innovation when we delegate, and then giving opportunities for others to lead. So today we are joined by Jake Wayman. Jake is a firm believer in creating value first through building relationships that bring about proactive change. His focus around working with organizations and individuals striving to bring innovation to the forefront because the business landscape is changing and evolving in a way that demands a whole new approach with constant disruption. Jake believes businesses need to be nimble and innovative. He is an employee benefits consultant with Hub International, multi-unit franchisee with Orangetheory Fitness, community builder, board member, Rotarian, and Honorary Commander of the United States Air Force. Welcome to the podcast, Jake.
Thanks, guys. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so maybe you could just start off with telling us a little bit about what you're currently doing in business here in Wichita.
Yeah, so I'm born and raised here in Wichita. Moved away to Kansas City for graduate school, but made my way back about 6 years ago. So currently, I do a lot of different things. So one of my jobs, as you mentioned, is employee benefits consultant for Hub. Basically, in a nutshell, what I do is I help organizations build benefit packages to help recruit and retain employees right here in Wichita. I'm also, along with my wife, the owners of the two Orangetheory Fitness locations here in Wichita, and soon to be another one in downtown Wichita here shortly, which we're really excited about. But then I'm also a huge believer in giving back to your community. So I am a Rotarian with the Downtown Rotary Club here in Wichita, but I'm also the vice chair of the Salvation Army Board and also on the Board of Trustees for Leadership Wichita. And then just very active in that thing because I think if the community gives a lot to you, you need to give back to it. And I think you need to invest your time and your treasure when you have it.
Man, that's freaking awesome, Jake. I really appreciate your time, especially you got so much going on as you were just talking about. That's really a lot. So how do you create time to be able to just do something like this or keep investing back into the community, maybe your personal life or your business?
Yeah, I mean, I live and die by my schedule.
Yeah.
I try to maximize as much time as I have. I think everybody has, I mean, I've heard many quotes like this that everybody has the same 24 hours in a day. It's just how you utilize them. So, I mean, for me, I'm an early riser. I'm up by 4:30 or 5 in the morning. And, when I'm up, I'm doing something, whether it be hitting a 5 a.m. workout class at Orangetheory Fitness, or if my wife is off at the workout and I'm at home with the kids, I'm working on something. When I have that, I look at that first hour to 2 hours of your day from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. I mean, those are my holy hours.
Yeah.
It's the world is not awake yet. There's nobody who's texting me, emailing me, calling me, or anything like this. You can make some focused efforts on that. So, I mean, that's how I begin every one of my days. But I begin every week on Sunday nights. I always spend about 1 to 2 hours actually just going through my week. I actually build out my own schedule. What are my to-dos for the week? What do I need to be focused on for the week? And, where are my projects at when I'm kind of moving throughout all the different hats that I wear throughout the week?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Wow. I really liked what you said about, 5 to 7 being your holy hours. That's where you really focus.
Yeah.
And get prepared.
Mm-hmm.
There's a saying by, I think it's Lao Tzu, by in the art of war.
Okay.
So it basically says that the battle is always won before it has begun. So,
Hmm.
going throughout your day, you're preparing kind of for the battle of what's to come.
Hmm.
And you're setting yourself up for success right in those first 2 hours of the day. So, I mean, how else do you plan out your day going forth after that? Like, is your day pretty routine, or does it change day by day by day? What does that look like?
Yeah, every day is different. I know there's some certain things throughout the week that are very consistent on my schedule. So like my board meetings, I know exactly when those are going to be for the month or the week. So I know those are on my schedule. But every day is different. So today I've been running from meeting to meeting to meeting. But I always try to carve out about 15 minutes before and after meetings to one, get prepared for that meeting I'm walking into, and then 15 minutes to afterwards to kind of just digest what just happened too. I
Mm,
mean, it's just trying to maximize. If you have 30 minutes, what are you doing with that 30 minutes between a meeting? Are you maximizing it, or are you jumping on social media looking at things? I mean, there you always have to find out how do you strategize your day. It changed it. Mine is different all the time, and there's a lot of people that are needing my attention on one thing or the next thing. And it's yeah. I mean, it's changes, but it's maximizing as much time as you have.
mm.
That makes sense. So whenever you're trying to maximize your time and say be as productive or efficient as possible, how do you spend the majority of your time?
I mean, I always have I always know where my projects are at. So whether
Gotcha.
it be in my employee benefits, where my clients are at, or if I'm prospecting and looking at new clients and working with potential new clients, or if it's something at Orange Theory that we're getting ready to roll out a new promotion, or and on the boards that I'm on, if we're raising money or what have you, I always have like a mental, not necessarily a mental note, but on my when I prepare my week, I'm always like, where are my projects at? What needs to be moved today to the next level? And the thing is I don't get caught up in doing all the tasks that need to be done for those projects. I have other people that do those, but it's making sure that I know exactly where that project's at and keeping tabs on it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where I think the best thing is people could, get involved in one thing and just be, all into it and be working all the time on it. But if you really want to, be most efficient as possible, and I always like to say, create multiple streams of revenue. How do you
Yeah.
do that for yourself? And it's just being able to know that you can't do everything perfectly, but you can help manage the projects along the way.
Yeah, you're really knowing exactly what's happening and
Hmm.
when it's happening through your people.
Hmm.
So, a follow up question to that is, how has delegation given you the time to focus on strategy with your business to give you time to really think what
Yeah.
comes next?
That's been a work in progress. A lot of it has to do with trust. Is
Mm,
trusting that the people that you're working with. So, for an example, my wife and I are kind of in a transition period. So during the pandemic, I was really one who's trying to help Orange Theory survive the pandemic. Now that we're out of the pandemic, she's now stepping in to help us thrive outside of the pandemic. And so, leadership styles that are needed at that point in time are different. But me stepping away and letting her kind of take the reins of running the organization has been difficult for me because I love to know what's going on, but trusting her that she's going to run the organization right. And
mm,
especially the people that we've promoted internally is just trusting them. And because the thing is, if you don't have any trust, then you're not going to be able to delegate.
yeah,
And that's the thing is if
definitely.
you can say, hey, I need you to take care of this project, but then you're constantly like, where's it at? What are you doing? Hey, you should do this. You should do that. And just constantly micromanaging them.
Mm,
I had to learn through, through going through consequences with it. I mean, there's times that I was micromanaging the heck out of people and they were like, what are you doing? Like, didn't you hire me for a reason?
Yeah.
And just
yeah,
making sure, just giving them that trust to be able to do it.
yeah. Trust is key.
Hmm.
That's where it starts with delegation. We
Yep.
have to trust our people
Hmm.
to have faith in them to, take out that particular task.
Yeah.
So, how often do you really dedicate to strategizing
Hmm.
in your business to really have that visionary thinking? You delegate to all of your employees, the people that are working for you.
Yeah.
But once you have a little bit of time open to know where to take the business,
Yeah.
How much time?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a matter of a set amount of time. There are certain people that are meticulous about their schedule. They set aside, on their calendar, they have an hour for visioning or an
Yeah.
hour for this. And I don't necessarily like doing that. Like I don't have an hour set aside just to answer email. I'm in the mindset of it's more of a mindset shift that I have. It's like I'm always having that vision mindset there. So my job as an owner of a business is thinking, where do we need to be at in the next year, 2, 5 years down the road? My director needs to be responsible for what's happening today, tomorrow, next week, next month. And that's what I've empowered her to do. So for me, it's more changing that mindset of just always having that vision mindset. I would say, I try to, you know, when I'm driving, it's weird. I don't listen to music when I drive. I think when I drive, because
Okay,
I'm in
yeah.
the car a lot. And so that's my time of visioning is driving. And that's kind of when I start doing, everybody kind of gets their ideas in the shower. I get my ideas when I drive. So it's just trying to find, if I know I'm going to be in the car, I want to maximize that time so it's a productive time. And so, I mean, that's where I think is so many people I don't watch a lot of TV. I listen to music when I want to listen to music, but a lot of times it's like, how am I filling my mind with things that are going to help further my family, further my business, further myself? So,
That makes sense. So what it sounds like to me is just the quality over quantity principle.
yeah,
Is it doesn't matter how much time you're setting aside, as long as when you're setting aside that time or you're making that time to be able to sit down and strategize, that you're actually using it
yeah.
effectively.
It's being intentional. I mean, it's being intentional with your time that you've been given. I mean, because that's where sometimes people get on their phones and they doom scroll, and
Yeah.
it's an hour later, and they're like, "What just happened? Like, where did the
Yeah.
time go?" And it's trying to always. My wife gives me a hard time at this because even if we're sitting there watching TV, watching a show that she likes to watch or whatever, I'm doing something, whether it be I'm doing laundry or I'm reading an article or I'm doing something. I'm being productive with that time. Trust me, it's probably not the most healthiest thing, but it's it's
Yeah.
it's what I found that works for me. I mean, that's what helps me be me.
Yeah. Just hearing you talk, Jake, you strategize every single thing in your life. And you have to because you're so involved. You're so active. And what's great to hear about you is that you lead by example. You are out there. You're out there doing it. And that is ultimately the one of the greatest values in leadership is to lead by example. Now, as you create this time and space to strategize, I'm curious, like, what are some of the new ideas or initiatives that have come about
Hmm.
in this time of thinking? And what's one of the greatest ideas or initiatives that have really come
Yeah,
about in that time?
I mean that's a great question, and I'd love to say I'm the person who comes up with all the great ideas, but it's a lot of studying other successful people. It's
Yeah.
studying what and not even just like the people like you know. Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, the people that everybody always names. It's studying people like you have on this podcast, like Ryan Beatty.
Yeah.
Understanding how did they think, what did they do, and gleaning examples from that. And I think the biggest thing what I've learned is I don't have the greatest ideas, but I'm able to put my own spin on them.
Yeah.
A lot of the things that I've had the opportunity to create in this community weren't brand new. They weren't startup ideas. They were being done in other markets. And I was like, how can I make this relevant in Wichita and successful in Wichita? I mean, I think so. And it's also leaning into the team that you've put in place, whether it is the team I have at Orangetheory or the team I have at Hub or, in my nonprofits, in my family, but it's leaning into them because all of them are great people that are insightful, that have ideas to share. And it's just more of asking them the right questions to get them to bring those ideas out. I mean, that's where I think the most successful people is leverage is a bad word, but they leverage the people around them and the talents that they have around them.
Oh yeah. So a couple of questions I got. Well, actually, let me backtrack a little bit. It sounds like reinventing the wheel isn't necessarily your cup of tea. It's finding that better design
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
implementing it.
yeah,
Innovation.
yeah.
That makes sense, and I really like that. Whenever you're looking at other people that are prominent leaders, what are some of the qualities or aspects of these leaders that you look to that inspire you?
Yeah, I think it's how they treat their people. One, You
Yeah,
know, is if they're a leader but have no followers, they're not a leader.
that makes
You
sense.
know, and I think it's the way that they lead, and if they lead with their emotion, they lead with transparency. You know, I think there's just certain things that I pull from aspects of different leaders. So certain people lead different ways, and you know, and you find different things that you appreciate about them. Like, you know, I'll use John Rolfe with Thrive Restaurant Group as a great
Oh yeah.
example. You know, he's got, you know, 5,000 plus employees over across, I think, 11 states now. But you
Wow.
know, his whole mission, the reason why they changed their business name to Thrive, is because they want their people to thrive, and it's fully maximizing even the person who is a 16-year-old hostess at the front of Homegrown to the person who's the GM for, you know, all of Homegrown. Like, each one of them have a place in the organization, and he fully maximizes their potential. And so it's, you know, it's finding things like that. But I think the biggest thing is, how do they treat their people? I
Yeah,
think that is the one thing, that if they don't treat their people right, then they're not a great leader.
that makes sense. So another question that I have, just to elaborate on, you were talking about how some of your most productive uses of your time are while you're driving
Hmm.
and being able to strategize in those time. Are there any, say, tips and tricks or things that you do to be able to prepare for those times?
Yeah. So I write everything down. So
Okay.
when something comes in my head, I'm writing it down. You know, it's making sure that, like, when you get that nugget of wisdom or whatever, write it down. Even when you're preparing for meetings, it's, you know, it's going in and what is the goal of that meeting? You know, because
Yeah.
if you set up a meeting like right here with us doing this podcast, you know, there's a mission for this podcast. We have a purpose for this podcast. It's not a waste of your time, not a waste of my time. Because that's the
Mhm.
thing is if I to ask somebody for a 30-minute to an hour meeting, you know, I'm taking away an hour of their day. And so I want to fully maximize their time and maximize my time as well. So, I mean, the best way to do that is just staying, you know, when I say staying prepared, it's not having to produce a huge agenda that you have to follow in the meeting. It's more just like, you know, kind of what are the highlights? What do we want to accomplish out of this meeting?
Yeah, that makes sense. It leads us, or it leads me back to thinking about another topic that we had discussed. I can't remember if it was inside one of the podcast episodes or outside of it, but structure is good to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
Structure can be bad in a lot of other ways.
Yeah.
And making sure that you communicate that vision and push it through to everybody that's involved
Yeah.
is a lot more important than the structure.
Yeah.
That agenda serves a purpose, but if you're solely just going word for word on the agenda and just
Mm-hmm.
walking through, say, we have outlines for what we want to talk about. I mean, people can see it on the camera or just on the
Yeah.
desk in front of you,
Yeah.
but we're not just reading off of that. It's discussion format for a reason, because what's inside of your brain and your mind is the reason why we have you on this
Yeah.
podcast.
Well, and again, like you talked about, you had a key word in there, vision. So, you know, it's, you know, that's something that I do on an annual basis. What is my vision for my year? And it's my vision for each hat that I wear. So, what's my
Okay.
vision as a father? What's my vision as a husband? What's my vision as a business owner? What's my vision as a friend, as a board member, as a professional? You know, and honing in on those things and establishing goals around each one of those visions too.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have that North Star, then what's the purpose?
Yeah.
And I think so many people don't really realize that. I mean, and I know where this topic is about delegating, but if I don't know what my vision is for my life, how can I delegate anything? Because you
Yeah.
don't know what you're delegating.
Yeah.
And you know, I think even with our organization with Orange Theory is, yes, we're part of a franchise, but we have a vision for our organization. We have core values of our organization for how we want to follow. And you know, that helps with us when we delegate, is, you know, following those values when we're doing the different activities, projects, what have you, in the organization.
Yeah. That makes sense. Starting with why.
Yeah, starting with why, our purpose,
Mm-hmm.
our reason for being,
Mm-hmm.
really,
Exactly.
you know. You know, Jake, I really like how you have stated that you're very focused on things, but you're flexible, you're adaptable
Mm-hmm.
to the end goal when certain things come up in your life. I think that that really sticks out to me as being an effective leader. Now, you also mentioned that you lean into others.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about you, but it's about your people.
Mm-hmm.
It's about asking questions. And that's how you get all these new ideas. That gives your people ownership in doing what they need to do effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And you're allowing that through your delegation. Now, there's another thing that really stuck out to me, and it was, how do leaders treat their people? That says a lot about a leader.
Mm-hmm.
So, through delegation, giving them the responsibility, the ownership to really be effective in the business is key. And that's something that you do.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. Now, a question I have for you is, how is delegation in your business affected your personal life with your family or maybe community involvement?
It's opened up. So, like, when the pandemic hit, my wife and I had just bought an Orangetheory. So we bought in January 2020. Pandemic hit in March, and we were shut down. And when we reopened, it was into a whole new world. Nobody was
Mm,
meeting in person, so none of my boards were meeting. None of my extracurricular activities were meeting. So I was able to fully 100% focus on Orange Theory.
mhm.
And I actually was micromanaging a lot in this process, and I learned a lot in that. And I realized, I'm a person who I need to be in. I need to have a lot of different things going. I like to
Yeah.
have multiple projects running at one time because if I get bored, I get dangerous. Is kind of how I say it. I mean, that's kind of
Oh,
bad, but
yeah.
my point is when the world opened up again and we started having all these meetings, I had to figure out a better way to lead my organization. Because if I was going to sit there completely 100% focused on that, I'd be working 70, 80 hours a week. And I was doing that for a time. I was sacrificing. My wife had just had our son, and I was sacrificing those first few months because I was so focused on, you know, Orange Theory. And this is where if I was going to get involved in all these different things, something was going to fall, something was going to
Mhm.
break. And I don't want it to be my family, I don't want it to be my business, I want it
Yeah.
to be this. So that's where delegation comes into play, because you have to figure out, like, you can't do it all, there's no way you can
Yeah.
do it all.
Totally. Yeah.
And I think a lot of it has to, people have to learn through the process, they have to learn through failure, and I did. There's certain things that happened, I was like, okay, I got to take a step back, I need to figure this out again.
Yeah.
And I'm still figuring out. Like, I am way far away from being perfect at this, and I never want to be perfect at this, because you always need to be learning and trying to figure out. And I kind of wrote down a couple different things that I just was talking to somebody about a couple days ago. But you talk about delegation, but it's also, there's other ways that people are part of your team that want to be led. So they may
Mhm.
be ones who like delegation. Maybe they just want to be supported. Maybe they just want to be coached. Maybe they want to be directed. And sometimes you
Mm.
need to just
Yeah.
direct people and say,
It's very
this
true.
is what needs to happen, because maybe somebody new in an organization, but they may move from being in a directed place, they want to be coached. That's
Yeah.
kind of a high touch thing. And then you go to supporting, where it's like, okay, I'm going to say this, and I'm just going to support you along the way. And there's delegation. It's like, I trust you with what this project entails. This is our project. This is our goal. Figure out how to get there. And
Totally.
so, for me, with my team in Orange Theory, it's understanding how they want to be led.
Yeah.
And each one's different in that. And I'm still working on that, of how do you do it. But kind of full circle back to your question is, I've learned through the process of proper delegation, but if you don't learn to delegate properly, things will fall. Yeah.
Yeah. And you just summarize, the four styles of leadership right there:
Hmm.
direction, coaching, support, and then encouragement, too,
Hmm. Yeah.
And there's different levels.
Yeah.
People are at different stages in their leadership journey or their
Yeah.
personal development
Yeah.
or where they are in their organization.
Hmm.
We have to be adaptable. And certain leadership styles work best in certain scenarios,
Yeah.
too. And it's encouraging to hear you say that, we're all different, and we have to focus on that other person to know
Hmm.
where they're at so we can lead effectively.
Hmm.
Now, you have so many things going on. There's so many things happening in your life. How do you keep everything at a high level without just completely drowning yourself out with all the things you have going on?
That's a great question. And I don't know if I have a very great answer for it. But again, is like, I plan out my weeks. I mean, they may be able to see it, but let me pull it out here. It's something that I created about probably 6 years ago, but it's called my week at a glance.
Oh,
And
yeah.
this is what I sit down every Sunday night and fill this out. And so, I mean, I have,
Wow.
my to-dos, I have my nonprofit boards, I have my, what do I need to follow up on, and projects, those sort of things. So it's all like right here.
Yeah.
And so it's always
Wow.
front of mind for me. I try to be as paperless as possible. Having something physical like this helps me so much of being able to make sure I'm, keeping those projects going. And so I actually try to touch all my projects at least once a week. There's some weeks that some take a lot of my attention. There's some that won't take a lot and very little of my attention, but at least try to touch them every week to see where they're at. Even with when I'm trying to grow my book of business with Hub is, it's trying to, who are my top, 10 potential customers I want to be talking to, and where are those projects at and moving those down the road. I think it's just it's being consistent. I mean, not persistent, just consistent. And, and that's where I will say I have very little buffer in my days. So if something does, happen, I need to try to find ways to build it into my schedule. And sometimes I do overextend myself because I like to say yes to things because I like to be helpful. But, I'm learning the much better things of, saying no, but also if I'm saying no to something, there's a reason why I'm saying no.
Yeah.
Because it's about maximizing, my time, maximizing all the hats that I wear.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're really clearly planning out your day, envisioning what's coming next. I love your a week at a glance chart there. I'm going to have to borrow that from you. That looks very helpful.
Yeah.
And just to have that physical piece of paper there, that's so helpful.
Yeah.
You have to have that constant reminder of this is what we need to be doing.
Yeah.
It's holding ourselves accountable.
Yeah. And it is. And I think it's just that consistency of doing it. I mean, this is something that I know people, it's like with exercise, is people may work out, for a week and say, man, I'm not seeing results. But, it takes time to build those habits. And I mean, I've been doing this since I was, 25 years old. And, it was, I can't remember the book. I can see it that kind of taught me to look at this and do this week at a glance and kind of the holy hour conversation we had earlier. But I can't think of the book. It'll hit me later on after this podcast. But it was one of those ones that really was like, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
I mean, people can sleep in, they can, but it's like, if you have that ability to do, it's just going back to maximizing your time. I mean, that's where I think it boils down to, is maximizing it and tracking your time, tracking, what you're doing.
Yeah. Now, before we end, Jake, I want to ask a question. If you could recommend to our podcast listeners, what's one thing that they could start delegating to, effectively create that time and space to strategize, what would that one thing be?
That's a great question. I think it's, I'm not going to give you a full answer on it, but yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen those quadrants of what's, it's in the right top, it's something that is,
that's the Eisenhower matrix.
Yeah, it's like, it's
urgent,
urgent, important, urgent, non-important, but it's understanding all the things that you do on a daily basis. I encourage somebody, if they want to, track your week, track what you're doing in the week, and and then after that, review your week. That's what I do on my Sundays. Is I not only review my week prior, but I plan my week ahead. And it's kind of saying, okay, was that a productive week? Was there something that I needed to change last week that I wasn't most productive at? And that's where I start finding, it's like, what do I need to start delegating, trimming off, those sort of things, and really fully maximizing that time. I mean, I can't say there's just one specific thing because everybody's life is different.
Yeah.
And it's understanding, like, again, on this podcast, you all may find somebody else who's going to help edit this, because that may not be your specialty. That's not what you're fully great at. Like me, it's like, there's certain things that I hate accounting. I understand finances, but I don't do my bookkeeping because I don't want to. I think that because I can use that time elsewhere. I think it's trying to find out what things that you really enjoy doing and that actually produce good results for you, and do those things. If you love the accounting and bookkeeping, then do it. If you hate sales and marketing, find somebody else to do sales and marketing for your business. It's finding those things, finding what your strengths are, and really honing in on those strengths. I think too many people focus on, why do you make my weaknesses better? No, make your strengths better.
Yeah. Focus on the good, and the good gets better.
Yeah.
I love it. Man, that's awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. It's really, really great to have you here. And again, I just appreciate the time that we're able to get out of you. Everything that you're talking about today, I don't feel like I sat here and talked too much because I'm just sitting here at the edge of the seat, like leaning forwards and listening to every word that's coming out. And I really enjoy it. Is there any last words that you got for our podcast audience before we wrap everything up?
I think it's is kind of talking to what we've been this entire time is. I mean, everybody has the same 24 hours in the day, but it's how do you utilize them? I think it's and what people don't realize is I get 8 hours of sleep a night too.
Yeah.
Because I fully maximize what goes into my day, and I think it's just my recommendation is look at your day and figure out where do you have some buffer that you can actually really focus on. Where do you want your life to go? Everybody needs to have a vision for their life, whether it be a yearly vision, 2-year vision, 5-year vision, but understanding where you want to go, because once you put that North Star out there, things start happening. When you know what you're trying to achieve, things will start happening.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We need to create a vision for our life. We need that guiding star.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much again, Jake, for joining us on the Discovering Leadership podcast. You've added so much value to our podcast listeners.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much. This is as exciting and fun to talk about.
Yeah, awesome. Well, for our next episode, we're going to continue the delegation series, and we're going to be talking about multiplying productivity. How do we lead leaders to multiply our growth? So remember, you can catch our podcast episodes every other Tuesday on Apple, Google, or Spotify.
And don't forget to check out Enturian.com. That's ENTURIAN.com. You can also go to exemplifyleadership.com. We're posting all the updates to the podcast and when the next episodes are coming, what the next episodes are about, and all that fun jazz on all of our social media. And if you want to see the video format of this podcast, go to the Enturian YouTube channel. That's really all I got for you guys. You guys know exactly what to expect, especially if you made it through this podcast. You're hearing that every episode. So, nonetheless, we'll wrap things up. Don't forget that alone we survive, but together we thrive. See you next episode.